the modern workforce is changing in incredible ways. That means that you need to change the way that you think about building and serving your workforce as well. And so Carrie Friend is here to discuss the changing dynamics of the workforce and what those changing dynamics mean for your marketplace. So Kelly is the Director of Workforce Development and Partnerships at Veryable, and I know that we've had a handful of conversations now, and that she's got a lot of incredible thoughts about a lot of things, and so I'm excited to have you on the podcast, Kelly. I know, especially with this topic, it's something that you're passionate about, and having heard other things you're passionate about as well in the business world, I know you've got some awesome ideas and some passion behind this. So maybe just for the first question, would you want to go into why is this a topic that you're passionate about?
Yeah, absolutely. So I have a history of working in nonprofit and education, and currently at Veryable, we look a lot at workforce and on-demand labor and the gig force and how all those play together. But in my previous roles, we were always looking for the answer of what would unlock the full potential of a person or a workforce. Is it full-time? Is it part-time? Is it internships? And the list goes on, right? Like you can go on and on about types of workforce, and the answer just seemed a little out of reach. And then I took a meeting with Veryable. One of a colleague of mine through the state ended up working at Veryable, and I took that meeting, and he was talking about something that I just saw a huge potential in. And it just kind of clicked. It was that aha moment, like, yes, we need to start serving people for where they are at that point in time and offering up all options of workforce. So I'm super passionate about allowing people to work the way that they want to work, but also how does that play into a business? How can they unlock their full potential?
Yeah, I think that the gig economy isn't the only way that workforce has changed over time. There's been, like, you can look historically, the way that people work has changed significantly in the past, 200 years. And I think looking at, the introduction of the gig economy in the beginning with, Uber and DoorDash or whoever it might be, and then the expansion now of the gig economy to where in some of those, like rideshare industries or things like that the gig economy was first in, they're now becoming competitive. And over the last, 3 to 5 years, the gig economy has been expanding into new verticals. So I think there's really ingenuitive leaders who are thinking, what areas could be served by this model, the marketplace model? And so I think that is ushering in, this is my personal opinion, I really think that's ushering in another new era of what the workforce is going to look like. And so I think it'd be great to hear from you some of the things that you're seeing. What is the way that you see the era that we're moving into? How is the workforce changing?
Yeah, so Veryable centers on manufacturing, supply, and logistics. So our operators, our gig workforce, is utilizing skills that they're bringing from all over. So they are holistically bringing every opportunity that they've been exposed to from high school to other employment situations and bringing that to the platform and really allowing to leverage that skill set in a marketplace. And it's amazing because they are becoming the modern tradesmen. They are able to flex their schedule, they're able to flex their skills, they're able to show their merit. And it's really remarkable. And it's the thing that really still wows me being at Veryable now is just to look at all of these talented operators that are choosing work in a different way and trying to figure out how do we show that value up against a full-time worker, because they're bringing the same grit to that job, right? So they have these opportunities for work and they're bringing it every day. So just kind of looking at what the gig force has the ability to do in terms of defining what that looks like is amazing. So they're not just like this empty shell of people that are, unskilled or don't have a desire to work, right? So you think about what a full-time worker is, right? And things pop into your head immediately, like, oh, reliable, skilled, educated. And then you say, what does a gig worker look like?
Hmm.
Right? And you kind of pause. Most people do, right? But these are the same individuals that are just looking at work in a different way. So most of our operators are under 45 years old. So these are young, robust, hungry individuals that are looking to define their skill set in manufacturing and logistics and supply and everything that's underneath that umbrella. And they're sharpening their abilities every day. And they're choosing it, which is amazing,
Yeah.
right? So it's a choice. So they're going out there, they're getting on our platform, they're choosing it, and then they're getting that on the job training, and then they're pursuing it more and more. And we have wonderful operators, but trying to really grab that identity is really hard these days, right? Because it's so new. It's the emergence of a new workforce.
Yeah, I love that you hit on like the one that they enjoy it, that they want to do it. The way that I see the workforce changing isn't necessarily the amount of work that they want to do or anything along those lines. Certainly not the skill sets. It's just the way that people want to work, right? I think that's what's changing, and that's had so many advantages to businesses as an implication of the way that people want to work, because it opened up new opportunities, new ways of thinking about that. But I love that you mentioned that just how they enjoy doing it, and that's what's really the thing that's changing is how they want to work. And so I think maybe another question to go into would be what is this new model, this new workforce wanting to do? What do they want to be different? What are they looking for?
So they're looking for flexibility, like true flexibility. Most of our operators value that first. Second, they want, competitive pay for the skills that they're bringing to the table. And then not much else is different from your full-time workforce. But that first one, they want to be flexible. So they have things in their life. And I think the pandemic really brought it out, right? You had to take care of your kids, or you had to take care of all these peripherals that were in your life that were barriers to full-time work at that time really came into focus, and you had to start making some choices during the pandemic. And then outside of the pandemic, and now we're coming close to that hump, hopefully, right? We're on the outside of it. People still have, those commitments, and they're wondering, how can I work better, and how can I work competitively, and how can I still learn skills and earn an income, but I need to do it so I can still do these other things. And maybe my situation in life will change, and I'll jump into a full-time job or a part-time job, or maybe I'm a student now, right? And I need to be able to have both. And I think it's just the wanting of more and more, I would say, equality or equalness across of how they want to work. And there are now options for that. And they're diving into it. And they're finding it works for their life. Variable pays next day. So those immediate needs can be met tomorrow.
Well, that's awesome. I think that, the independence and flexibility, those are really two of the biggest things. And I think that one of the ways that we'll see the more interest grow for this dynamically changing workforce is when we see that you can be served in a number of new ways as well. Like you've mentioned, upskilling or kind of growing in your career through working in a different kind of way. And so maybe the best place to go next would be with the changing workforce. Do you see a way that we need to change the way that we are serving gig workers or independent contractors that we work with?
Yeah, I do. I think that there should be more options available in terms of freedom of learning a new skill without taking on a massive college debt, looking more into micro credentials or certifications, and truly on the job training. Um, Gig workers go in with a history of work that they've completed, schooling that they might have already had, and being able to utilize those and be productive day one is really important, because they were there for a short time and they really want to put in, the maximum amount of effort and be able to learn something new. So on the job training becomes really important. So how do we really focus in on allowing gig workers to expand that skill? And then what do micro credentials going forward look like? What does certifications look like? And how do they build upon that? So a lot of higher ed right now is looking at, hopefully, right, looking at stackable credentials, right? How do we start from here? But without the on-the-job training and having that flexibility to provide that, we're just going to end up with, kind of the dynamic. You got your degree over here and you got your modern tradesman over here with on the job training. And how do we kind of mesh that so it really makes sense, without loading somebody down with kind of nonsense debt?
Yeah, I think that's really good. There's an opportunity for you to learn new skills in the gig economy, but there's also the opportunity. Would you say that there's a good opportunity for marketplaces to partner with higher ed to create those kinds of programs that, and what might that look like if you've got an idea around that?
Sure. So, Veryable and Western Governors University would probably be a really good example of that. So we just went into a partnership where WGU, if you don't know them, they're competency based, they're low cost, they're flexible, and they really serve adults that want to earn a degree alongside their work. So they're working. These are degrees aimed towards working adults. So we started a partnership there, and it kind of just clicked all the boxes for us. And they are offering up a scholarship to our operators that are interested and wanting to pursue that. I think that truly the key there is going back to what gig workers want, and they want flexibility. So does higher ed have that ability to provide that? If they do, perfect. They're in a good spot to serve these individuals, because you're meeting their values and what they want.
Yeah, I think really that comes down to, like, at the same time that gig workers want flexibility, the reason they're going for gig work is because they enjoy that independence and putting their schedule together in their own way and being in a better control of their pay. At the same time, they recognize often that they're giving something up, right? You're giving away the identity of a full-time worker, the benefits that you might get as a full-time worker. And when competition's increasing in the gig economy, which, like I mentioned earlier, is a really good thing, I think that in order to really do well and come out of this era as one of the scaled and leading businesses in the gig economy, like, you have to do it by serving your customers well, both your gig workers and your end users. And I mean, one incredible way you could serve gig workers is by starting to give them that identity of a full-time worker while still allowing them the flexibility that comes with the independent work they're looking for. And I'm rambling here, but that is a really good way to do it, is helping them with education benefits. It's something that is great even when full-time employment offers that, which it doesn't often. But I think that is something that marketplaces could really do to differentiate themselves. Do you have any other ideas of ways that marketplaces could help to give some more of that identity of a full-time worker back to their gig workers.
Yeah, and I kind of even challenge you on that identity of a full-time worker, right? Because they're not apples to apples, right? So it's kind of apples to oranges. So I'm gonna challenge you a little bit on
Yeah,
that.
great. Yeah.
Because I do think that there is a full-time worker, and that is like a standard kind of identity, and they're going to go through a full different adventure, right, into a full-time workforce. But our gig workers, I believe, want something different, even aside from that. Like, I think that they want to be seen, right, with their own identity. And if we label it going forward just the gig worker, but what attachment does that have when you say that, right? It doesn't need to be like a pause and say, oh, I don't know. No, a gig worker should be seen possibly as like a jack of all trades, or could be seen as skilled in manufacturing, being able to be portable with their skill set and being an asset to many different areas. They should be, that's different than a full-time worker, right? Full-time worker is going to be present and kind of on duty for, X amount of hours a week, really focused on that one problem to solve that the company has hired them for, where maybe this gig worker starts getting an identity where they're problem solvers, or they can port their skills over to multiple businesses and really push that business to better productivity and being more, having a better ROI on their time there. So I think that the gig worker's identity, it should be seen as strong, right? Just as a full-timer, but maybe a little different, because what they're bringing to the table is something different too.
I think that's really good. And one piece of that I think is really important to pull out is not just, like you're mentioning, it's not just how they see themselves, it's how they would like to be seen, right? And so I think that maybe it's a good point here to talk about what the mindset needs to be from marketplace leaders, how they should see and understand their own workforce, based on the way that things are changing. Do you have any other pieces that you'd like to pull out and say, hey, if you are leading a marketplace right now, how should I be thinking about this?
If you're leading a marketplace right now, and the gig force that is independent and utilizing their skill set, should be identified, right? And that should be promoted, because more and more people are choosing to do that type of work, right? Are more inclined to have a second gig. They might be a full-timer and also have a second gig. So seeing that, I would just say bring value to that, right? Really, really promote them as Americans that have a great skill set, that are willing to learn, that may not be choosing full-time work because of other things, but it's nothing to be shameful for, right? It shouldn't be like, oh, I'm a gig worker, so that means I am less than. No, it means that I am equal to, but just different, right? I'm gonna pull out an example, right? So electrician, right? You say electrician, and you hear skilled, licensed, credentialed, right? You invite an electrician into your house. They are an independent worker, right? More than likely, right? If they're not associated with another company, but you bring them in, you bring them into your house, they do the work, you both look at each other at the end of the job, right? And you're rating them, right? I'm rating their work. Did they do what they needed to do for the day? And then turn around and they're rating me. Did I really enjoy being at this person's house? Was it hard to navigate? Was everything clear? Exchange of pay. And I didn't think anything different of them, right? But now, if I put that in the same scenario and I call them a gig worker, do we have the same feelings?
Hmm.
And I think that if we can get to that point where we look at the gig workforce as this powerful wave of workforce that can really be utilized and appreciated for the skills that they have and the one of skills that they want to learn on the job or through a certification, I think we'll be in a better place because you have your full-time workforce, you have your part-time, then you can have your gig workforce, you can have your interns, and you can have your apprenticeship. It doesn't need to be just mutually exclusive. Like I'm only going to have this type of workforce and then put all of my energy and all of my money and then go into a whole conversation and then just say, there's no more workers. Nobody wants to work anymore. What do you mean nobody? Well, you have 100% of the available full-time workforce, but you're blindsided to the fact that other people are out there that want to work. So open up your vision, right? Stop looking in portrait view, look in landscape view, and you'll see that there are others. And are you going to take advantage of that?
Yeah, I think that's a really good point as well. Is to if you are a big believer in the gig economy and you're investing in that by building a business to serve, in the gig economy, like practice what you preach by diversifying your workforce. Utilize, especially like we've talked about, as the gig economy is expanded into more verticals, you have more professional verticals like electricians and things like that you can tap into for and I think that that's a really good way to be thinking about it. If you want to build your trust in this workforce, if you want to demonstrate your trust, diversify the way that you build up your workforce within your company and make use of gig work. So Kelly, I feel like every question you've given just incredible answers, and I really appreciate that. I really appreciate that you shared your expertise and everything that you've done on the podcast. If you were to sum this up with one big thing that you're like, this is the thing I really hope everyone took away from this episode, what would that be?
I would say if you are in manufacturing, supply, and logistics, and you are just looking at the way that you are defining what your workforce is and your labor constraints and your product and getting it out the door, quit looking just in what you have always done and start looking further out and really see that there are multiple forms of workforce out there.
That's great.
And one of them is the gig workforce, and they're just becoming stronger and stronger. But that's all businesses too. So before I go on a soapbox real quick, right, about about this, but I really do think that businesses in general, what worked 5 years ago is not working today, right? And if you keep on having the same arguments and the same questions and kind of just hammering down that there's no qualified individuals anymore, nobody wants to work anymore, those are lazy answers, or I would say lazy questions. And the answer is what can you do as a business to really develop multiple forms of workforce and really bring that into your company so you can stay relevant and on time and moving forward, and reallocate those resources that you continue to push into one box that's not returning what you want.
That's great. All right, and one final kind of fun question. Outside of all of the things that we've talked about today, would there be one piece of advice that you would give to marketplace leaders, just in a different area, or maybe somewhere where you're not in your day to day? What's that? What would be that piece of advice that comes to your mind?
That's really interesting, because I think that we're all having a shared experience right now. If you're in a marketplace, be it Veryable or being at any of the others, right? We're all having a shared experience, and we are all watching this gig workforce really starting to define itself. And how can we be advocates for them? And how can we support either the modern tradesmen and how they want to utilize their skills and be portable, or be it the Uber driver that wants to continue to hone in those skills and earn income? So how do we really support this shared experience for our gig workforce? Because at the end of the day, they're people choosing to work, and we need to remember that, right? They all have individual lives, and they all have chosen to either supplement their income with gig work, or they do it for the majority of their income to earn an income. But how do we look at that and say we are in a shared experience right now, and we are creating a new type of workforce, and how can we really support that? Like, what else are they saying? We hear them. We've provided the flexibility, so we're providing this. What else will continue to allow Americans to work, right? Because at the end of the day, that's what we need.
Yeah, that's great. Awesome. Kelly, thank you so much for joining. Thanks for sharing. I know we appreciate it, not just speaking for myself, but for others who are going to listen to this. I think that's going to be super helpful. And so thank you. Thanks for joining us. And to you guys who are listening, of course, check the show notes and follow Kelly on LinkedIn. And then there will also be a link there to check out what's going on with Veryable. It's an awesome marketplace. I've really enjoyed following them and keeping up with them. I'd suggest you go check them out as well, see what they're up to, and work with them in whatever way that's relevant to you. And Kelly, if there's anything else that we could put in the show notes, feel free to let me know.
Thank you.
But yeah, absolutely. Otherwise, guys, thanks so much for joining. Kelly, thank you for joining, and we'll see you in the next episode.
Thank you.